Before the skyscrapers, before the neon lights, and long before the city became the heartbeat of America's ambition, New York was built in kitchens, one simmering pot at a time. In the early 1900s, thousands of Jewish immigrants came to this strange and chaotic city, fleeing from pogroms, persecution, and unbearable poverty across Eastern Europe, especially in Russia, Poland, and Ukraine. They came clutching suitcases, dreams, and recipes passed down through generations. Step onto the cobblestone streets of the Lower East Side back then, and the air would hit you like history served hot, sizzling onions and chicken fat, bagels bobbing in boiling water, kosher pickles steeping in wooden barrels. Food wasn't just something to eat. It was the one language every generation understood, even when English failed. In this new and often hostile world, meals became memory, a form of resistance, and a way to hang on to pieces of a life left behind. These dishes, born from survival and scarcity, would one day shape the soul of New York's cuisine itself. Because when you peel back every layer of pastrami on rye or feel the warmth of freshly baked challah, it tells the story of people who refused to let hunger steal their heritage. Bagels, with lox and cream cheese and before. New York reached for the sky in steel and glass. It was grounded by something ancient and round, the bagel. Dense, chewy, and shaped by tradition, these beloved rolls were hand-formed before dawn by Jewish bakers who knew that survival meant working before the city even stirred. They boiled the dough in copper kettles, baked it in roaring coal ovens, and sold them fresh from wheeled carts rolling down Hester Street. But for the immigrants clutching small hopes and big fears, a bagel was more than breakfast. It was belonging in a city that didn't yet want them. When cured salmon, lox, finally reached these streets, it was almost ceremonial. Sliced paper thin, laid delicately over a bagel slathered in cream cheese, it blended old-world austerity with new-world indulgence. By the 1920s, this simple trio of dough, cream, and fish had taken root as a weekend ritual in Jewish homes. And soon, it wasn't just food. It was a memory that could be eaten, a taste that stitched together family, faith, and forgotten rivers back in Eastern Europe. One bite took you home. Not just to your tenement in Manhattan, but across oceans, to Sabbath mornings near smoked rivers, where family gathered around a table now oceans and lifetimes away. By Alice. If the bagel was the crown of the Lower East Side, its unsung cousin, the bialy, was the quiet heartbeat. Softer, flatter, and kissed with golden onions in the center instead of a shiny glaze, these rolls whispered stories that bagels boomed. Named for the Polish town of Białystok, Bialis came from bakers who knew every ingredient had to matter, because some days, flour and onions were all they had. Inside tenement ovens, these rolls were born of grit. No boiling, no shine, just heat, onions, poppy seeds, and the hands of immigrants shaping survival. Carried in brown sacks by garment workers at dawn, bialis were breakfast and a badge of resilience. Their aroma filled the stairwells and narrow alleys of a city still rough on outsiders. For some it was food. For others, each bite was a prayer for family left behind and a past set ablaze in war. In a city that forgot names fast, the bialy remembered. One soft mouthful at a time, it stitched together memory and migration. Fleeting as it was, warm, eaten quickly between long shifts, it was a taste that said, "We're still here." Brie, kasha, and kugel, buckwheat groats, and noodle pudding. Before pasta-filled plates or rice found its pantry space, Jewish immigrants entrusted their sustenance to the humble strength of kasha, buckwheat groats, toasted golden in iron pans and married with onions, eggs, and precious schmaltz. This wasn't just a dish. It was the earth of the shtetl reborn in Manhattan kitchens, hearty and honest, stretching far when meat couldn't. Kasha was comfort. It kept families fed through long winters and longer weeks. Then there was kugel, a chameleon of a casserole that showed up crispy or creamy, sweet or sharp, depending on what scraps whispered from the pantry shelves. Made with noodles or potatoes, laced with black pepper or raisins, kugel was whatever faith and resilience could bake. Tenement women carried their trays down staircases to basement ovens, where the scent of onion and memory mixed with gossip and Sabbath prep. These dishes weren't elegant. They were sacred in their simplicity, and even now, one spoonful pulls you backward through time, to cracked linoleum floors, to borrowed warmth in a stranger's oven, to kitchens where flavor was a kind of faith, and food was a ritual of grateful survival. Or knish, potato-filled pastry. Stroll down Hester Street in 1910, and you'd hear him, the knish man, with steam curling from his cart and his voice cutting the city's hum. Hot knishes! 2 cents! But that piping roll of dough wasn't just a snack. It was a lifeline disguised as comfort, potatoes mashed with onions. Tucked into thin dough, baked or fried till golden, it was food on the move. Perfect for tailors, newsboys, and pushcart vendors bracing for another 12-hour shift. In the old country, knishes appeared on festival tables. In New York, they hit the pavement daily, fuel for the overworked and underfed. Immigrant women rolled sheet after sheet by hand in crowded kitchens, their hair tied back, their aprons flowered with hope. Variations bloomed: cabbage, kasha, or leftover brisket. Even mashed potatoes churned so smooth they dissolved on the tongue. By the 1920s, the niche had taken over corners of Coney Island, Bronx sidewalks, and beyond. It was proof that when everything else seemed temporary, you could still wrap survival in dough, and when someone handed you a hot niche in the cold, you believed just for a moment that you wouldn't go hungry again. Fief. Pickled kosher dill cucumbers. Take a walk across Orchard Street on a sticky summer day in 1912, and one smell cut through the noise: pickles. Sharp, garlicky, briny, half a city paused for that sour perfume drifting from barrels propped beneath awnings. These weren't the vinegary spears of later delis. These were kosher dills, cured in salt brine, cold and cloudy. Fermented to perfection by Jewish picklers who wrestled with time and temperature. Not just taste. With no refrigeration and little cash, pickling was preservation. Necessity turned into art. Each barrel wasn't just storage. It was a bustling science of flavor, each one bubbling with salted garlic, crushed dill, and patience. Kids earned extra pennies running pickle errands, and full-blown debates erupted over which barrel yielded the crunchiest bite. But by some miracle, that humble cucumber soaked in brine became iconic. It stood tall next to towering pastrami sandwiches, balanced the richness of beef and rye, and offered a bite of resilience with every snap. It was sharp, unapologetic, proud, and something in its tang said, we may have had little, but with a little salt, a little time, we could make things last. That barrel was home. That crunch was legacy. 6. Gefilte fish, ground fish patties. No dish puzzled outsiders more, or held more emotional weight for Jewish families, than gefilte fish. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't simple. And yet it was everything. In the shtetls of Eastern Europe, fish was expensive, almost sacred. So families stretched what they had. Scraps of pike or carp. Bones and heads bought cheap, blended with matzo meal, onion, egg, then simmered gently in broth until tender. Once in New York, gefilte fish followed suit. It arrived in immigrant kitchens along with the families themselves. Mothers stood at fishmongers' stalls, haggling for the pieces no one else wanted. Back home, Friday afternoons meant the aroma curling through every tenement hallway. Bold but familiar, sweet, savory, unmistakably Jewish. To outsiders, it looked odd. Pale, moist, served cold. But to those who'd carried it across oceans, it was more than food. It was a memory plated, a river remembered, a family honored, a Sabbath made sacred. Topped with horseradish, tingling with sentiment. Every bite was a reminder. Though they had lost their homes, their language, their land, flavor and faith still survived. That gray, humble slice wasn't strange. It was precious, because when tradition simmers long enough, it becomes identity. 7. Matzo ball soup. When the kitchen of a Lower East Side tenement filled with the scent of bubbling stock and crackling schmaltz, everyone knew matzo ball soup was on the stove and love was in the air. Born out of restriction and resourcefulness, the dish began with the unleavened matzah of Passover, crumbled, softened, enriched with egg and fat. then rolled into airy balls dropped into golden chicken broth. But it wasn't only soup. It was maternal magic. It was care served hot. In homes where even a whole chicken was a luxury, mothers coaxed flavor from necks and backs, garlic and dill, memory and prayer. They stirred slowly, taste-tested silently, and summoned healing in wooden spoons. Children waited near the pot, noses twitching, eyes wide. The steam that rose wasn't just from broth. It carried stories, cures, warmth, and hope. To get matzo ball soup was to be seen. It came out on sick days and Sabbaths. It was medicine for colds, heartbreaks, and soulish. And even today, a single elegant spoonful stirs more than hunger. It awakens heartstrings, whispers old languages, and offers proof that even poverty-stricken kitchens could still serve dignity, one perfectly imperfect ball at a time. 8. Pastrami on rye bread. If New York has a sandwich that sings its soul, it's pastrami on rye, hot, smoky, and unapologetically bold. What began in Romanian shtetls as meat preservation became a culinary revolution in the cramped delis of the Lower East Side. Immigrant butchers took tough brisket and transformed it, brined, seasoned, smoked low and slow until it surrendered into flavor. Slice after slice stacked high between chewy slabs of rye. Kissed with sharp mustard, it was more than lunch. It was declaration, a rebellion against blandness, a celebration of what struggle could become when seasoned with pride. Each deli was a temple of comfort, where factory workers gathered on crowded benches, elbows bumping, mouths full, retelling their day in bites. This sandwich didn't speak softly. It shouted, "We took grit and made feast." By the 1920s, it was the city's signature, Jewish food that had become everyone's. The spice, the steam, the crisp crust of rye, it was the city's heartbeat, wrapped in paper and passed across worn counters. You didn't just eat pastrami on rye. You honored the journey that made it possible. Corned beef brisket. Before corned beef was the icon of delis and diners, it was an alchemy born from necessity. Immigrant butchers turned one of the cheapest, toughest cuts, brisket, into something tender and generous. Cured in salty brine for days, boiled with garlic, peppercorns, and onion, sliced thin and served hot beside boiled potatoes, it was more than a meal. It was a victory against hunger. Corning preserved freshness and stretched meager resources. In coarse meat they saw opportunity, and in salt they found salvation. On Friday afternoons, tenements grew fragrant with the deep, savory scent that signaled Sabbath was near. In the beginning, families stretched a single slab across 4 plates. But over time, corned beef became centerpiece meal-worthy, served with laughter. Bread and pride at weddings, holidays, and neighborhood delis humming with life. In each tender bite lay the story of transformation, of people who took rejection and turned it sweet. Patience rewarded every slice, and salt turned into something sacred. Corned beef brisket didn't rise easily, but neither did its creators. Both required time, faith, and fire to become something worth remembering. 10. Kolant, Sabbath stew. In the hush between Friday night prayers and Sabbath sunlight, kolant kept watch. It was the slow-simmered heart of the Jewish home, a pot brimming with beans and barley, onions and potatoes, and whatever precious scraps of meat a family could spare. Because cooking on the Sabbath was forbidden. Kolant became the miracle, assembled in advance, then brought to bakeries still warm from Friday's bread. There, among dozens of others, each covered pot rested overnight, drawing out deep, smoky richness while families rested and believed. By midday Saturday, the air on the Lower East Side was thick with its perfume. Children ran ahead to retrieve the bubbling treasure. The lids glowed hot to the touch. Touching that pot was like feeling time itself, unrushed. Unadorned, unbothered by fashion, Kolant whispered, "Goodness takes its time." For weary immigrants who toiled 6 days a week beneath sewing machines and steel. This stew wasn't just food, it was restoration. It was the meal that waited while they healed. A spoonful of peace after a week of noise. Kolant was patient. And in its patience, it taught generations that in the hardest seasons of life, there was still time to taste warmth and wonder. 11. Rugelach, rolled pastry with nuts or fruit. When Jewish grandmothers rolled out rugelach dough in the tenements of early New York. You could follow your nose right to their door. The aroma, sweet, rich, comforting, filled stairwells and rooftops. Crescent-shaped and flaky, rugelach came from homes where sugar was once rare, and every walnut, every raisin, had to mean something. In Eastern Europe, butter was a luxury. But in New York, where flour and jam were easier to come by, rugelach flourished. Dough was tender and rolled by hand, curls wrapped around nuts, cinnamon, and sometimes fruit preserves that dripped out like stained glass secrets. Women baked late, after children were fed, clothes mended, prayers said. Dough was kneaded on crowded tables while homework happened beside it. Oven heat became both warmth and purpose through a long winter. Every tray that emerged was golden. Meant to last, maybe, but rarely did. Because these weren't pastries. They were love folded into layers. That first flaky bite wasn't just a taste of sweetness. It was endurance with sugar on top. Rugelach proved that even after a hard week in a harder city, joy could still be homemade, shared, and sprinkled with cinnamon hope. 12. Babka, sweet yeast bread. In the cluttered kitchens of New York's Jewish tenements, few smells turned heads like babka baking before the Sabbath. It started with leftover challah dough, rolled, spread with sugar or jam, twisted into a loaf that looked like a street-side masterpiece. But once chocolate became affordable, the recipe transformed. Swirls of cocoa, sugar, and cinnamon wove through buttery dough, telling sweet stories in dark lines. Mothers baked babka not just for holidays, but for joy's sake. For weddings, births, or simple evenings that needed lifting. Loaves cooled in windows where noise from Hester Street bounced up and mixed with the smell of comfort sliding through the air. Neighbors exchanged slices like kindness, a gesture, a note of softness. Babka wasn't indulgent. It was a small rebellion of delight in hard times. You didn't need news to be good. A slice of babka could remind you there was still beauty in the ordinary. Still layers to life beyond labor. And still something golden rising inside, no matter how cold the street outside felt. Every twist of dough was an unspoken promise. Hold on, sweetness is still inside you. 3. Brisket in onion mushroom. Gravy. Before it became the centerpiece of Jewish holiday tables, brisket was a challenge, the butcher's cheapest cut, tough and unyielding. But Jewish mothers, seasoned by hardship, had no fear of tough things. They browned the meat in schmaltz, layered on sliced onions, garlic, and mushrooms, then slid it into low ovens where it spent hours surrendering. As it cooked, the apartment changed. Walls seemed to soften, and doorways smelled like anticipation. Brisket was never rushed. It needed planning. Families started days ahead, saving scraps for broth, bits of love for seasoning, hopes with every stir of gravy. By Friday nights, as the week drew to a weary close, the brisket came out shimmering. Not grand, but glorious. Ladled over potatoes or egg noodles, it wasn't just filling, it was faith-served hot. The onions melted into satin. The sauce clung to every strand. The brisket, so tender a fork could finish the job. It told the tale of transformation. Through low and slow effort, everything softened. What once resisted became the very heart of togetherness, flavor and reward, because in food, as in life, sometimes the toughest things, properly nurtured, turn into the most nourishing. 14. Herring in sour cream. In the old Jewish neighborhoods of New York, herring wasn't served with ceremony, it was an everyday echo of the old country, where winters were brutal and salt was wealth. Back home, fish meant survival, and herring was the cheapest, sturdiest kind. At Delancey street markets, barrels brimmed with fillets silver and slick, waiting to be softened and stirred into sour cream studded with onions, vinegar, and maybe, if fortune smiled, a pinch of sugar. Families transformed it with care. Soaked to temper the salt, chilled until creamy, scooped onto dense black bread or plain potatoes, it became more than a meal. It was memory in every bite, bold, briny, beautiful in its bluntness. To every new generation, herring said, our ancestors made do. They didn't mask flavors, they leaned into them. This dish wasn't trying to blend in. It stood tall, smelled sharp, tasted wild. For those who had left everything behind, that little fish restored something unspoken. It didn't just fill bellies, it proved that when you preserve what's yours, you carry warmth even in the coldest land. 15. Egg cream, chocolate soda drink. Despite what the name promised, there was no egg and no cream in an egg cream. What it did hold was magic. In the Jewish soda shops of the early 1900s, kids with a nickel and big dreams could order a taste of luxury they'd never afford otherwise. In a single glass, a splash of milk, a squirt of chocolate syrup, and a rush of fizzy seltzer, mixed in seconds by a soda jerk with a rhythm all their own. Pour, stir, fizz, foam. The result? A drink that felt like a party in a glass and a grin waiting to happen. On scorching days, factory workers lined up beside school children in corner shops for that one cold, frothy sip. It wasn't just a drink, it was imagination liquefied, rich enough to feel indulgent, light enough to chase away the weight of struggle. And it was beautiful in its simplicity. Chocolate dancing in bubbles, milk warmed by sunlight through the storefront windows. Happiness rising like cream even if none was in the cup. Egg cream was proof you didn't need money for wonder, just seltzer. Syrup and a reason to laugh, that's why. Even now, it's not just a drink, it's memory. Frozen in fizz. 16. Whitefish salad on rye. In the delis of early 1900s New York, whitefish salad was elegance dressed in work clothes. Rich, smoky spread packed between slices of earthy rye, delivered with quiet pride. It began in humble smokehouses nestled along the East River, where local lake whitefish were caught, cured, and smoked until they practically melted. Salmon was expensive, but whitefish? Still flavorful, still worthy. Jewish immigrants mixed its flaky meat with a light kiss of mayonnaise, some lemon, and chopped onion, then spread it thick like repentance turned reward. It wasn't just a dish, it was a weekend victory, usually reserved for Sundays when fathers might not work and mothers could exhale between bites. Creamy and intense, with the rye's chew pulling against the tender fish, it was both filling and familiar. You'd find it in every deli cooler, in every Sabbath spread beside the silver knives that passed around generosity. In a pushcart, it cost a dime. But to the ones who knew, it was proof of having made it. Just enough comfort to feel like you belonged without showing off. And with just one bite, the journey from scarcity to satisfaction felt complete. Potato latkes with applesauce. Few smells could stop time in the tenement like latkes sizzling in hot oil. Grated potatoes and onions bound with egg dropped into glistening pans and fried to a crackling gold. The aroma hit the walls like a hymn, pulling everyone closer. During Hanukkah, mothers stood by the stove for hours, sweating through shawls, carefully flipping the pancakes until every edge sang with crispness, while kids watched wide-eyed, their hands hovering, waiting. Latkes weren't just tradition, they were storytelling with a crunch. Each one recalled the miracle of oil, of lasting longer than anyone thought possible. A story Jewish immigrants understood deep in their bones. Paired with applesauce or sour cream, latkes were a contradiction, humble and holy, simple and celebratory. They were eaten on holidays and weekdays disguised as holy when spirits sagged. A plate of them transformed any table into a feast. In kitchens where oil was dear and potatoes were plenty, latkes made blessings from scraps. And when that first bite, steaming and tender, hit your tongue with a soft, starchy welcome, you didn't just taste food. You tasted joy that refused to flicker out. Onion rolls, soft buns topped with onions. Before the bagel wore the deli crown, onion rolls ruled quietly from the backroom racks. Soft, golden buns topped with slivers of fried onion, clinging to the crust like perfume on a postcard. They were born from whatever the bakery had left at the end of the day. Extra dough, a whisper of egg wash, and onions caramelized on the cheap. But once they hit those ovens, something magical happened. Fresh and warm, onion rolls were irresistible. Inside, pillowy softness. Outside, crackling onion that melted against your hands before a single bite. Sold to workers marching down Ludlow before sunrise, shared among friends, dipped into bowls of soup. They were sustenance with soul baked in. What made them special wasn't just the scent, it was their adaptability. They held everything: brisket, schmear, liver, or air, if nothing else was around. Bakers kept their onion roll recipes like secrets you only passed down over kneading boards. And even now, generations later, one sniff of sweet toasted onion can travel through time, to morning crowds, open windows, and food that didn't need to be beautiful, just warm and shared. Challah bread, braided egg loaf, no scent stirred. Tenants from their beds like challah baking in heavy pans the morning before Sabbath. This wasn't just bread. It was an offering, golden and egg-rich, its braided shape symbolizing the weaving of faith across family and time. Immigrant women started before first light, mixing dough in chipped bowls, humming songs from long-forgotten villages. Their fingers worked steadily, stretching and twisting each strand like they were braiding hope into survival. Even in weeks where money vanished like steam, families saved what they could for flour, oil, and a single egg, just to welcome the Sabbath properly. When the loaves baked, the fragrance wrapped the halls of the tenement in gentleness, soft as music, sacred as prayer. Kids waited by the oven, tearing pieces before meals, dipping them gently into honey while laughter bounced off low ceilings. To break challah meant more than sharing. It meant acknowledging that in the whirlwind of work and worry, something sacred remained. A reminder that you were not alone, and that sweetness, like blessings, should be passed from hand to hand. In every slice, faith, unity, endurance, dusted with poppy seeds and baked in light. Blintzes with cheese or fruit filling. Before American diners slung pancakes and fancy French crepes, Jewish kitchens had blintzes, paper-thin pancakes rolled around tender cheese or syrupy fruit, cooked with care and filled with love. They came from villages where every scrap of flour mattered, where milk was stretched and sweetened to soothe hungry bellies. New York immigrant mothers clung to that rhythm: pour, swirl, flip, fill, roll. On cast-iron pans blackened by time, each delicate round turned golden under butter's kiss. Fillings varied with fortune: sweet cheese for a good week, or tart apple, bursting cherry, even mashed potatoes when needed. Each one offered comfort you could hold in your hand. Holidays or rare relaxed Sundays brought families shoulder to shoulder. At the stovetop, waiting for the next fresh roll, warm and steaming, the smell tugging neighbors from their doorways. Sometimes covered in powdered sugar, sometimes kissed with sour cream. Each blintz felt like a reward, a blessing wrapped up in softness. Joy on a plate. And if you were lucky, your mother made a dozen extra, stacked them high, cooled them by the window. They never lasted, but the memory always did. Because there's magic in something thin, hot, and handed to you with love. Matzah brie, scrambled matzah with eggs. During Passover, when bread disappeared from Jewish kitchens, matzah brie arrived like a warm, familiar friend. It was the breakfast of necessity, comfort, and creativity. Shards of matzah softened in milk or water, then scrambled with eggs and fried in a pan that held memory in every crack. In cramped Lower East Side kitchens, mothers stood over stoves, making it sweet or savory depending on what the pantry offered. A sprinkle of salt and onions for lean weeks, or maybe sugar and honey if times were generous. Kids loved the crackle when it hit the skillet. Fathers loved that it filled everyone for almost nothing. It was more than food, it was adaptation under tradition. A humble triumph during restriction, a reminder that even when laws of faith limited choice, the heart didn't have to shrink. Some families treated flipping matzah brie like a sport. Who could turn the fluffiest one without breaking it? Who
had the best secret soak? But beneath all the variations, the intent remained: survival with dignity.
Matzah brie was resilience on a plate, crispy edges, soft middle, faith folded into every golden bite. When you step back and trace the flavors, The bagels, the briskets, the kugels, the pickles soaking in barrels. Something bigger becomes clear. Jewish immigrants didn't just feed themselves in old New York. They built a language of survival from their recipes. Every dish was a message. We will endure. Scarcity couldn't dull their seasoning. Prejudice couldn't starve out their presence. In their kitchens, small as closets, their wallets thinner than their bread, they made magic measured in aroma and love. A 2-cent niche eaten on a factory break. A Sabbath stew left in a bakery oven overnight. A slice of challah handed to a neighbor before sundown. Each was an act of resilience, not just nourishment. And what began out of need became the soul of the city. Walk through today's New York, into a bakery near Brighton Beach, a deli in Midtown, a pushcart on the Lower East Side, and you'll still find those echoes. Not just in taste, but in memory. Because these foods weren't just rations against hunger. They were stories etched in dough, in cloves, in smoke. They weren't just meals. They were love letters, written from a people who kept going, stirred by courage, salted with soul and shared across generations.